My first ride was a VW convertible. It was British racing green with a black top and chrome wheels. Today, I'm going to talk about my first Mustang, a 1979 coupe. Hello, I'm your host, Neidert. Thanks for listening to and watching my First Ride podcast. This podcast is about nostalgia, automotive nostalgia. You know, reliving the sights, smells, and emotions of special memories connected to our favorite rides. Said another way, it's about allowing our memories to travel back in time and experience our special car moments all over again. As I said in my introduction, my first car was a 1964 Volkswagen convertible. That car was so much fun to drive, and I have lots of great memories associated with it. However, I did yearn for more power than the VW could deliver. And when I was a senior in high school, a friend of mine let me drive his 67 Mustang fastback in the parking lot. I couldn't help but punch it a couple of times to smoke the tires and make some noise. It was so much fun. Well, the memory of the power in the parking lot lingered in my memory for a very long time. And then we fast forward to the mid-'80s. I bought my first Mustang. It was a light medium blue coupe with chrome wheels, 4-speed 302, and glass packs. It was like being back in the school parking lot all over again. So much fun. Well, today I'm talking about some of the 1979 Mustang history. 1979 was a year of transition for the iconic Ford Mustang. This marked the end of one era, thank goodness, and the beginning of another. In this episode, I talk about what made the 1979 Ford Mustang such a noteworthy vehicle. But before I talk about the specifics of the 79 Mustang, it's important to understand the context of the time. The 70s were an era characterized by significant changes in the automotive industry. Fuel efficiency and emission regulations were becoming increasingly important, and traditional American muscle cars were facing a crisis. The 1973 oil embargo had sent shockwaves through the industry, causing a shift in priorities. In other words, higher miles per gallon was more important than more horsepower. To survive in this changing landscape, Ford introduced the Mustang II in 1974. It was a smaller, more fuel-efficient version of the iconic Mustang. The Mustang II featured a 2.3-liter inline-four engine that produced, drum roll please, around 88 horsepower. Basically, I saw it as a Pinto with a little better styling, but the same horsepower as a Pinto. This was a far cry from the powerful V8 engines of its predecessors. Now, while the Mustang II may not have been a muscle car by traditional standards, it was praised for its nimble handling and easy maneuverability, making it a practical and fun-to-drive option for the era, at least for some people. But something was lacking with the Mustang II in a big way, especially compared to the early Mustangs. Eventually, Ford saw the light. They brought to market the 1979 Ford Mustang, often referred to as the Fox Body Mustang because of its new design platform. This year marked the beginning of a revival for the beloved pony car, with a return to the classic styling and performance that had made it famous in the first place. The 79 Mustang featured a sleek, squared-off design that was a far cry from the bulbous look of its predecessor, the Mustang II. The sharp lines and distinctive four headlamp arrangement instantly set it apart. This design, it would influence Mustang for years to come and become an icon in its own right. While the 79 Mustang may not have had the monstrous V8 engines of its early siblings, think of the 427, the 429, the 390 cubic inch, it still offered a range of power plants to suit different tastes. You could opt for the base 2.3 four-cylinder engines which produced around 88 horsepower. I call it Pinto power. Or step up to the more potent 5.0 liter V8, which for that era packed a respectable 140 horsepower. However, compared to a 2007 Mustang GT, which has a 4.6 liter engine, it's still a little weak considering the 07 Mustang GT had 300 horsepower. Well, let's move forward. At the time, the 79 Mustang was praised for its nimble handling and spirited performance. It was a fun-to-drive car that harkened back to the Mustang's roots as a sporty coupe. Enthusiasts could finally enjoy a balance of style and substance once again. The 79 Mustang marked the beginning of a new chapter for the Mustang brand. It set the stage for subsequent Fox-bodied Mustangs that would dominate the 80s and early 90s. Its influence can still be seen in today's Mustang models, which continue to captivate enthusiasts worldwide. In the big picture of the Ford Mustang, the 1979 model year is a pivotal chapter. It represented a resurgence of the classic Mustang spirit in the face of changing times and regulations. Its timeless design, spirited performance, and cultural significance secured its place as a cherished classic car. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about the fifth generation Mustang, also known as the S197. Now, this generation was produced from 2005 to 2014 with several models throughout that time. More specifically, I'll talk about the Mustang GT California Special, which was first introduced in 1968 with a targeted production run of 5,000. The GT California Special was reintroduced in 2007 and was produced through 2009. It was brought back several times up until 2017. So be sure and check back to learn more about the GT California Special and why it's of interest to me. Hint, hint, I want one, and I'm looking for one now. Not only am I looking for a Mustang GT California Special, but I'm looking for people that would enjoy telling their stories of their first rides and how their lives were influenced by them. And I bet you probably know someone that would be a great guest for my First Ride podcast, right? Let me know a little bit about them and their story. What about telling your story on the podcast? Let me know a little bit about you and your first ride. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. You can also go to My First Ride Podcast on YouTube. And when you do, be sure to tag, share, and subscribe. And of course, you can always go to the website, myfirstridepodcast.com. One final thought. You may not have your first ride, but you still have the memories. It's time to share them. Contact me if you have any questions regarding today's podcast, or if you'd like to be a guest on My First Ride Podcast. Send an email to myfirstridepodcast@gmail.com. I'm Gary Neidert, and you've just experienced My First Ride Podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching.